It's wintertime and we are planning our field season, which includes a lot of reading and writing and talking to experts about things. And I'm learning about cut flowers. Whoa, there's so many different species. I am overwhelmed, but luckily I got a chance to talk to some experts recently, including an interview I recorded with Dr. Ankit Singh, who's at the University of Maine. One thing that I am taking away from all of this is everybody is so nice in this field. And I did have to edit out a lot of reiterations from Dr. Singh, just saying, like, this is just so nice. I just really like this industry. One standout thing about Maine, well, two big standout things about Maine. Maine does have a cut flower collective, so a bunch of cut flower growers that got together to make life a little bit easier for cut flower growers in Maine. I will include a link to that in the show notes. And two, the Flowering in the North Conference. So this has been going on for a few years. Dr. Singh has taken it over recently, but a really, really good resource for anybody who's considering cut flower growing or is a cut flower grower and would like some more support either from their peers or from the research community. I was not able to attend the conference this year, and Dr. Singh caught me up on what I missed.
My name is Ankit Singh. I'm an assistant extension professor at the University of Maine. My title is rather long. It is Assistant Extension Professor, Maine Sustainable Agriculture and Ornamental Horticulture Educator. So, what that means is, in theory, my job has two main components, apart from the other things that I do. One is that I support farmers in sustainable agriculture in York County, which is the county located at the southernmost portion of Maine that borders New Hampshire. And what's lovely is it has the highest concentration of people, and it's heavily focused on agritourism. One thing that's a common adage in extension: you may not know the answer to everything, but you surely know who does. So I connect them to resources that they need. The second part is I lead the Flowering in the North Conference, which is a conference that gets all Northeast flower farmers together, where they get to engage, be social, and also talk about issues when it comes to knowledge gaps, such as overwintering or tulip harvesting or agritourism and how to lean into things like that. Flowering in the North has been around since 2019. It was started by one of my colleagues, Jason Lilly, who ended up leading this conference from 2019 or 2018, I think, for a few years. And to bear with me, I'm just going to do a little bit of reading the agenda from this current year, there's so many topics. One of the big ones is soil health, overwintering crops, selling direct to consumers, peonies, starting a farm in the first 5 years, weddings, a la carte weddings, lisianthus, IPM disease management, full service weddings, and then agritourism, social media and email marketing, mums, growing undercover, perennials, and post harvest handling. Cut flowers have been at the back mind of people. It also led to the industry trends where a lot of flowers would be imported from foreign countries. And America's supply chain and the refrigerated supply chain is so top notch that it has worked seamlessly. However, with the increasing ethos of grow local, buy local, and also with Maine coming up with its wedding industry, and also with the fact that a lot of the vegetable growers have recognized that you don't really make much money with CSAs, and there are a few things just that make it oversaturated with a lot of people doing the same thing, and it's very seasonal. The University of Maine strategically decided that this would be beneficial to serve the community in southern Maine and Maine in general, because Maine has become a wedding destination. There's an SNL skit about it. A lot of people like to come up and get married in Maine. And I understand why. It's really beautiful. The average farmer who is in flower farming leans female, very young, and also starting out. That institutional knowledge is not there the way it would be with vegetable farming. The best way to be able to get together is to learn by peer-to-peer learning. And that's what makes Flowering in the North so special. So when I joined, I was told that I'm leading this conference, and my first reaction was, wow, because I was fresh off my time in Florida, and I realized I've done a lot of teaching, I've done a lot of extension work, but I've never really led an event. And you recognize that a lot of it is just party planning, but it pushes you and it makes you think about things that you'd never thought about. One of the more successful sessions tended to lean towards soil health and towards starting a farm in the first 5 years because a lot of farm businesses are new. And if you talk to anyone, you'll recognize that flower farming is tough. But what makes flower farming unique, in Maine especially, is there is an organized effort and a camaraderie that I've not seen with other crops. Farmers will advise each other even though they're competing for the same business. That's unique to New England. And I have been in awe of this level of collegiality and niceness.
I really want to agree with you about New England audiences. Like they support each other and they learn from each other in such amazing, interesting ways, especially coming from outside of New England and having your experience in Florida and my experience in other states is it's wow. But another thing about that party planning aspect of it is it skews how you think about education in a way that like sometimes you're conveying information and sometimes you're just creating an environment where people can learn from each other. Like we took the time to think about it, like you took the time to go and visit, like that has all of a sudden become such an important part of outreach education for me.
When I started this job, I did a needs assessment where I went to visit many flower farms and I asked them 4 questions. And those 4 questions gave me a wealth of information. And I'm glad that I got that time with them, in
Mm.
addition to a lot of people who gave me flowers every time I visited their farm. So I asked, what is going well? It's because I tried to be a positive person and I wanted to begin by asking what is going well so that before we get into the what's going badly, it's so easy to fall into the trap of, oh my God, things are so bad. But in acknowledging what things are good, with flower farming in specific, we found that there is a lot of money coming in through agritourism. There is a lot of wealth in the Bostonian area. A lot of people that summer up in Maine. I feel like everybody in Connecticut has a summer home in Maine or camps in the summer as a family tradition. So there is that revenue source coming in where people drive up a couple of hours to spend a day going berry picking, flower picking, cutting your pick your own. And so that is one thing that is going well. They have found that the wedding market is increasingly lucrative. Some people are now paying a lot of money for organic flower farmers. So, with what is going badly, or what are the issues facing? Labor is one of them. And with flower farming, it's different from regular farming because the capacity tends to be much smaller. Most of the people that attend the flowering in the north are single owner operated flower farms that, thanks to controlled environment agriculture, which is another baby of mine, that allows for a lot of productivity in a small area. And then people with 2 or 3 greenhouses are able to sell enough flowers over the summer or made to order, depending on if they decide to heat their greenhouses, have incomes that last them throughout the year. Granted that flower farming can also be tricky with things like farm insurance and the outlays and paying people, taking a loss on random weather events that can freeze or ruin an entire crop, or spending money on having to bring in water tankers to, like the past year was a drought, but the year before was a lot of rain. So there is that unpredictability that one has to increase resilience. And by doing that, you're building up infrastructure that makes it more expensive. And then cost of inputs are increasing, fertilizer prices have gone up significantly. So there are all of these problems that are also being challenges, rather, being faced
Mm.
by the community that have allowed them to practice having to make adaptations. And then talking about the third question was, what is what are the education gaps that you're facing? And the gaps, which included exactly the topics that I listed out in flowering in the north. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about these events more in a recap of what 2026 was like. And we ended up asking the last question, and I always began by prefacing that I'm a big boy, I can take it, but let us know, what are your thoughts about extension?
Yeah.
And that one took me by surprise because a lot of people said, especially for the ones who knew what extension was, is extension of 40, 50 years ago is not the same of what extension is today. Like the University of Maine used to have 2 to 3 faculty per county years ago, decades ago, and now it's down to averaging one faculty every 2 counties. And so there is that reduction in capacity that can only be made up for by more funding. And there is that challenge. And then it also tends to be personality based rather than institutional. So that is like a double edged sword. So if you have someone who gets along with people very well or is ready out there, they're able to do their job very well. But you also have people who may not be that accessible or may just not be people. And so I often tell people that this is a dream job in a way, especially for extroverts. So this ticks a lot of boxes. But through the needs assessment, the long way of saying how the Flowering in the North was decided with its agenda.
What strikes me is like how well you have certain topics that are super super broad and some that are super narrow, and you can tell that that is a child of like we really went and asked people what do you want to know about, right? And it was like because like one was like Lizzie Anthus and the other one was like starting a new business, right? Like so like these huge topics. You mentioned one that was the most well attended.
We began our day with a panel and a keynote. Like for this year, we began our keynote with Carolyn Snell. She's the part of the Snell family farm. She's a generational farmer. And she was talking about how she inherited her farm and she worked on the farm that she grew up on and how she had to adapt and deal with different revenue streams and how pick your own and wedding flowers. So that was very well attended. And then between soil health, overwintering flower crops, and selling direct to consumers, we found a pretty strong, equally divided amongst all the participants because we did end up beginning with one session that was open to all and then 3 breakout sessions where people split up because flowers can be very delicate. One needs to manage the soil very well and ensure that the amendments reflect what the crops need, not oversaturating the soil and protecting soil salinity for stability in the long run. When it comes to overwintering flower crops and selling direct to consumers was very important because there are institutional sales or wholesales where the price per stem may not be that high. And also, depending on the volume, some people focus on large volume while some people focus on small volume but take in an extra care. And then some people also want to grow a variety of things for flower arranging. Then we had a panel on the second day that is, what does sustainability mean in 2026? And sustainability has a lot of meanings, and that is without the political aspect of it, funnily enough. Because sustainability can mean how do you sustain a business 1 year? Or how do you sustain a business that can be given to someone else generationally? And so, sustainability in the way you're having to do it fiscally, in the way that you're utilizing components, like a lot of flower farming has a lot of plastic components. Peonies was so well attended because that tends to be the bread and butter for a lot of flower farmers. And starting a farm in the first 5 years was a very good, well attended talk where we had 2 speakers, one representing from the business side, where we had Chris Lawton from Farm Credit East, who spoke about what he's generally found with dealing with people who are starting a business. And, businesses don't immediately begin to make money, but there is that resilience that builds up till you get to the break even point, and then you make some money. And then we had Anna Jane Cocoon from Little State Flower Company, who also spoke about her experience. And what I learned through the panel, as well as quite often, flower farming requires resilience in your ability to power through anything. And many times it requires adaptation, such as not having to pay yourself. And those are tough choices people make to be able to allow for their workers to be paid, for crops to continue into next year. And then a la carte weddings was a newer topic because what's happening is full service weddings become very expensive very quickly. And with the way things have been rising so quickly with costs, I last year had attended 3 weddings, and my friends were telling me, oh my God, it was so expensive. I don't have the exact figures, but you hear 20 to 50 to 80,000 being bandied about for a wedding. That's not going to raise any eyebrows anymore. So, a la carte weddings, especially for people who want to keep it really small, just need a bouquet or two, has picked up some interest.
So from the point of view of the producers, what's the difference between a la carte weddings and maybe just like regular event
Oh,
growing
yeah, so
or
there's a
their
big difference. I
yeah.
actually am so excited to tell you about that. So, when it comes to a full service wedding, it is a lot more involved, and flower farmers, and I am so proud of that community, is especially ones who are recognizing their worth in time. And what's happening is when you sign up for a full service wedding, you meet with the clients. You understand their palate. You understand what the either spouse, what their aesthetic is like, what their value systems are, what do they want. And planning around that takes time, and then it also requires having to come out to the venue, arrange everything in advance. And it's not just the wedding bouquet, it has to do with flowers around. It could be on the chairs, it could be on the tables, place settings. So there is a significant time commitment. And that is why flower farmers can commit, or it takes up a full weekend. And so with a la carte, a lot of flower farmers found that it was a way to be able to do weddings without having to be that involved. And anecdotally, what I was told in that open discussion that I attended, that you uh, set aside half an hour to speak to the client, you understand what they want, you arrange a bouquet or two for them, and then they come pick it up and then take it away. And
Yeah.
so that is the big difference for the question you just asked between a la carte and full service.
And it still takes all of that biological knowledge, like planning and like seasonality of when is what, like when are things in bloom and like what can you offer, and you also have to be the business person and maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. I think that my question going forward and thinking about like your programming and how the scientific community can support these growers is that like you're doing a really nice job of balancing creating an environment where people can learn from each other and places where the findings of research can be inserted or biological knowledge can be inserted. Like, do you have any thoughts about how to balance that or where the needs are? Like, where do we need more support from the scientific community to support these communities? Like what I'm sure you're already planning your conference for
That's a
next
good,
year in your
ye-
mind.
yeah, that's a good point. And so we had a lot of, we had 3 Google Forms for each day, and I'm still processing through the feedback. But one of the questions is, what would you like to hear about more? People would like to hear more detailed scientific evidence. And it's not to say that all the people who came in were not academics. Like for peonies and lisianthus, and for soil health, we had professors that came in and spoke, and people with doctorates who spoke their subject matter expert on how to handle it. It's not just anecdotally what I did and that worked for me. So we have a balance of experts. Talking about the last year of programming that I wanted to touch on a little bit, agritourism has been a concept that's been bandied around for a while, but it's also quite important to be able to build that knowledge gap and to be able to explain to people what flowers do well, how to choose the flowers. And then we're talking about post harvest handling. That is a big one because the stakes are pretty high. You could lose your full crop if you don't store it right. Biological beings can be heavily manipulated, and so when it comes to flowers, you store them at just the right temperature. You can delay flowering until when you actually need it, and you can delay degradation of the flowers if you store them at not freezing but slightly above, depending on the flowers. So it's amazing what temperature, storage, and maintenance can do for the longevity of flowers.
Cool. Yeah, that's something that I need to learn more about before I get into cut flowers, because that's definitely one of those things where if you are used to working in vegetables, if you're used to working in food crops, you don't know a lot about
And
that.
that's and I've run into a lot of flower farmers. I've run into a lot of farms because part of my job, and it's one of my favorite things, is I go visit farms all the time, and I talk to farms, and they say, I've been doing vegetables for so long. I'm either thinking of starting or I'm just wanting to change full focus. And I always tell them, begin with a small patch, see how you like it. Flowers can be more temperamental, but the rewards are higher. You can sell for a lot more money. There are all of these value additions that you can also do to flowers if you don't want to have the stress of growing the flowers to sell it at a peak freshness.
Yeah. What I find the most interesting about cut flowers is it seems like there's lots of different growers coming to the same table. Some vegetable growers who are thinking about adding cut flowers to maybe make their farm business a little bit more resilient. Or you have ornamental nursery crop growers who are maybe moving out of a greenhouse into open culture or high tunnel culture. And I'm wondering, like, do those two groups of growers have similar problems? Or, like, what are the misconceptions that those different audiences have when they start growing cut flowers?
People think everyone's rolling in money. People think that just because flower stems cost $5 each, that oh my God, they must be raking it, and that's not what's happening. People don't recognize that the quality that it takes, the work that it requires, the input costs are also very high. One of the big topics in the panel discussion was how does one communicate the value of a product that is selling in a way that justifies to the consumer why the prices are so high.
Yeah, that's tough. Did anybody have any satisfying answers for
Oh
that?
my God,
Or,
yeah. Oh my,
yeah.
I love the panels. The panels are very nice. Some people have been explicit by writing it on a note, like on an easel, by saying the price on these flowers reflect the labor, the ingredients, and the effort put into it grown in America. And also, if you go to farmer markets, people bring a mixture of the flowers that they want to sell, but which tend from a full spectrum of the less expensive to the more expensive varieties. If someone comes and complains about the fact that, oh, do you not have something cheaper? This is too expensive. You can tell them, well, make it a point to come early in the day and pick up those flowers.
All right, well, I will leave it there. Let me know what you want to know more about. I am focusing my efforts here on tarnished plant bugs specifically. So I do want to know what species of flowers you might be the most concerned about when it comes to tarnished plant bug feeding. If you have weird distorted growth, you think maybe it's a piercing sucking feeder, let me know. Leave a comment and thank you for listening.